Everything school should have taught you in one place. With a property portfolio of over 17 million and an accountancy firm of over 16,000 clients, as well as being an accountant to some of the wealthiest people in Australia, Jeremy Iannuzzelli will be sharing his lessons on everything school should have taught you so you can build the life you want.
Harley Giddings, or you might know him as Property with Harley. He does a huge amount of content on Instagram and TikTok. I'm very lucky to have this young man as a client. He's probably one of the most inspirational young clients that I've got. He's worked his backside off over a number of years, and I'm really lucky because today I want to really share for a lot of the listeners the transition that Harley's made from working an insane amount of hours during his younger 20s to now starting his own business called Dizzy Property Group, where he's providing lots of mortgage services, mortgage broking services to many people out there. Very much an inspiration for the younger generation. If you've got children that are, probably the ages of 16 or above, and you're really wanting them to get started, into learning more about financial literacy around property and borrowing, I'm going to encourage you to make sure that you get them to like Harley's little videos. But Harley, thank you very much for joining us today. I believe you're in Sydney. You've left the cold of Victoria for this podcast. Is that right?
I absolutely have. Thanks for having me, Jez. And that's a great intro. Makes me, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not used to being pumped up like that. I'm that cringy bloke that posts videos online, but yeah, keen to have a chat with you, mate.
Mate, the awkwardness of your videos I actually love, because what you do is you're connecting with lots of people and you're making property sound fun. You're not just making it all about, trying to make money, although that's what we try to do with property. We're there to grow our wealth, but you really put things in a way for everybody to kind of understand how to do it, the mechanics involved with it, but you don't necessarily take the hard processes involved in building a portfolio away. You don't make it sound like it's all glitz and glamour. You really portray it as it's a lot of hard work, dedication, and you've got to be dialed in. And I use that word dialed in quite a bit. You have to be dialed into what you're wanting to achieve, whether it's from work or from property, because if you're not and you kind of treat this as a bit of a half foot in, half foot out, you never really find success. But today we're going to really go into that transition you made from being an employee to now starting your own business while having, I believe, 4 properties currently in your portfolio today at the ripe age of 25. You're no longer young anymore, mate. You've kind of pivoted and hit that point of no return. 25, it's closer to 30 than it is from your 20s. And it's all about life, making some serious choices, and those serious choices hopefully lead to much bigger and better things. But for the listeners out there that don't know who Harley is, Harley, do you want to give us maybe a snapshot of your last 3 to 5 years, which led you to where you are today?
Yep, sure thing. So I'm a bogan from the bush. So I'm in Sydney at the moment, but I'm from regional Victoria, so about an hour north of Melbourne. Grew up very middle-class family. Dad's a firefighter, mum's a hairdresser. Grew up through the footy club, still played footy up until a couple of years ago. But I guess my whole journey from about 14, 15 years old, I really started getting involved in investing and learnt early on that if I wanted to get ahead financially or live a special life, I guess, that you would have to invest. So one of the best investments Mum actually made back in the day was she bought The Barefoot Investor, which I feel like it's the generic book that every kind of Australian kind of starts with these days. And I started there and really kind of learned about compound interest and how if you start early, you invest and you let time do its thing in the market, you can really see some great results. So that really motivated me early. And yeah, from about 14, 15 years old, I've been working multiple jobs for the last 3 years up until, as you said, starting my own business about a month or so ago. I'd been working 2 jobs 7 days a week. So pretty well worked, 7 days a week for like 3 years straight. So I'd work full time in mortgage broking. And then people often know me through my content as the BP guy. I'd also work at BP, the petrol station, where I work an extra 25 to 30 hours a week on top of my full-time job. And then, I just kind of would use all of that income and my savings to start investing in property. I learned about leverage on my journey, my investment journey. You start learning about leverage with property, and that's when I wanted to start getting into the property market. So yeah, that's kind of, I used the 2 jobs, worked my butt off, and I've been able to build a portfolio of 4 properties as it stands.
A lot of people don't know this, but you actually lead a very frugal lifestyle. You've got budgets upon budgets. I know that when you do travel and you love your traveling here or there, you look for all the specials and discounts. Do you want to share just that ethos about you? You know, you're not afraid to spend money in the right spots, but you're always looking for that really good deal. And, you know, that's obviously transposed into the type of properties you've purchased. But do you want to share a bit about that of you, that back end? You're not just a hard worker who earned, you know, good money by working lots of hours, but you really respected your money. So do you want to share a bit about that? Because I know you've got some really great spreadsheets, and I get to see all those budget spreadsheets you create.
Yeah, for sure. I've always been a very frugal guy. I think this is just how I've kind of been brought up with my parents. I've always been a saver, and obviously I'm being able to build this portfolio of 4 properties. I always want to acknowledge how fortunate I've been to be able to live at home with my parents. So I'm 25 years old, still live at home with the parents, currently looking to move out at some stage this year, but it'd be remiss of me not to mention my privilege to be able to live at home with my parents. But I kind of use that more as ammunition and motivation that I wanted to be able to give back to them one day. So I've always been very frugal with myself. So I'd never buy new clothes. I don't buy new shoes often. Like I never spend money on those kind of things. But I think with my journey, even posting stuff online, people see how much I've sacrificed working 2 jobs 7 days a week. I'm very frugal, follow my budgets and all these things. But as you said, I do like to travel, and I find that I'm trying to do the best I can in terms of balance. I'm very ambitious and want to get ahead financially, but I also want to try and have that balance because it's so important in your 20s to travel, have fun with friends, have these experiences. And like you said, I couldn't care less what plane I'm on. You could strap me to the side of the wing. I don't care. I just want to get there the cheapest way possible. I'll sleep on any bed when I'm traveling. It's more so the actual experiences and adventures that you have.
And that's
on travel.
And such wise words, especially because, you know, a lot of people want to stay in the best hotels and want to spend the most amount of money on luxury goods. But for you, it's the experience. It's not necessarily the physical side of what can come from it. But I want to talk more about the 2 jobs, because a lot of people say, oh, you're just working 2 jobs. You know, you're paying more tax. Why are you doing it? You know, there's so much more in life. Have you really found that balance? But do you want to explain why you sacrificed, you know, maybe some good things you could have, you know, done as far as friends and, you know, lots of parties, but why did you work 2 jobs? Was it just for the money, or what was the outcome trying to achieve from the 2 jobs, Harley?
Yeah, so one, at that stage, it was, I wasn't smart enough. I just knew I had to trade time for money, and I knew I was just going to work my butt off. And the more I worked, the more deposit I can save, the higher my income is, so the higher my serviceability is. So as you know, when you invest in property, the hardest one is always the first one. The first deposit's by far the hardest part of getting into the property market. And that's where I was just kind of in my hustle phase, where I was willing to kind of eat crap and work my butt off 7 days a week, as I said. So I'd be out on a Friday night with some mates, and I'd be at BP at 5 a.m. the next morning. And then I've probably spent 99% of Sunday nights at BP from 6 p.m. till midnight. That was like my shift, but felt like it was like a hole in the head knowing that every Sunday night I have to stroll in there. And it was a cruisy job, and I love BP, but it was like there was definitely sacrifice there. I would have loved to be able to relax, put some Netflix on, eat some food, and then roll into my week. But for the last 3 or 4 years, I was finishing at midnight, then waking up at 8 a.m. for the full-time job and going again. And I was just willing to sacrifice, I guess, that little bit of time, because I needed the money for the deposits. I was very ambitious in trying to build this portfolio. And probably the bigger thing towards the end of my BP career, I guess, was the serviceability. As you try and build a portfolio, like, you run into serviceability walls fairly quickly. So I needed that extra 25 to 30 grand a year that I'd earn at BP for my serviceability. I wouldn't have built the 4 property portfolio without having that extra income.
Now, for most people that are listening, yes, sometimes working multiple jobs, there could be taxing implications in there, because the second job may not take out enough tax, but you're not necessarily paying, you know, twice as much tax because you're working a second or third job. You're still, in the eyes of the ATO, are seen to be earning an income. You pay tax on that income. It's just that what's been withheld from the employer employer wasn't enough, because they're assuming you're earning a certain amount of money with them, and they'll take out that certain amount of money as what they call PYG withholding. And you add that to your various jobs, and that's where you might have a bit of a tax bill at the end of the year. But it's not a negative for anyone listening. It's not something that you're getting this extra tax from the sky. This is the right amount of tax that you would have been paying if you were working one job earning the same amount of money. It just wasn't withheld from your wages. Now, I want to fast forward to where we are today, Harley. Today, you've just now left your full-time job, and I remember reading an article that you've handed your resignation into BP. Is that right?
Yep. So a month ago, I kind of took the leap, and I've handed both resignations in, which was a scary moment, but it just shows I'm all in on what I'm trying to do now.
So we've got no more employment income. So we haven't got the safety net of an employer paying us a weekly wage. You've got 4 investment properties, which I can say and verify and say that definitely there's no money that mum and dad have given you as far as cash. You've done all this yourself. And I know they're not paying your loans. You are. What things have you done to set yourself up in a way that you can start this business? What did you do prior to going out on your own and starting a business? What did you do from a buffer perspective, budgeting? Do you just want to share a bit of that to everybody?
Yeah, I kind of look at my property portfolio. That was essentially my first business, and it's still a business that I'm running and plan on continuing to grow. So with all my properties, I've got buffers in place in an offset account for each of these properties for any mishaps that might go wrong. I've obviously got insurances in place on all of these properties to cover any building issues or anything wrong with the building or any tenant issues, anything like that, which are like every investor needs to be having insurances and buffers in place. That just makes the safety net of like borrowing and buying properties. You just need that. So I looked at that as a similar kind of mindset to business, and I knew that I needed this extra buffer. As you said, with the mortgage broking game, when you first start, you probably don't see commissions for 3 or 4 months with when you get paid. So from the time of first call with someone, you probably won't see commission for 3 or 4 months. So you need to have this kind of money up front to, one, cash flow the business, but also all my living expenses, all my property portfolio costs. So as you said, I'm a big spreadsheet man. So I've done all the numbers on how much my property portfolio cost me to the cent. I know what my lifestyle cost me to the cent. And I also know what this business that I've just started is going to cost me to the cent. So I've obviously got enough money in savings behind me to go through with this business. But I'm also, up until last week, I just sold my first investment property as well. So we bought that property for $450,000 in 2022, about halfway through that year. We just sold it last week for $750,000. So
well done.
I'll be taking some of that money and putting it towards the business for sure as well.
And again, that's what these properties are there for you to do. When you invest your money wisely, and when you need that money to chase a different venture, which might have a significantly better ROI, which is called return on investment. And generally, business is probably one of the best returns on investment you can have if it's successful, because you are putting a very active amount of time or active amount of effort into to see it grow. I've done the same. I've sold properties to inject into businesses, and those businesses have done substantially better than what that property would have grown by or the cash flow would have been. So again, it's all about having your money in the right market or the right entity or the right activity, achieving the best layer of result. But it's important. You heard Harley say that he has his spreadsheets there to know exactly what his properties are costing, his lifestyle costing, and his business is costing, and that is a business plan. So if you go back to any of my podcasts, you'll see that I've done 8 or 9 steps of starting up a successful business, and that is having a business plan as well. So Harley knows exactly what he's in for, so there's no surprises. And Harley, it'd be fair to say it takes a lot of the fear of starting a business out. Now, and it's always a fearful thing starting a business because you don't know where things will be or how they'll go. But if you can have all your numbers down pat, it does take away a lot of the unknown, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. If you don't know your numbers, you're flying blind. So knowing these numbers, and even I always overemphasize the numbers. So I've got the little extra cushion on these numbers because you want to kind of prepare for the worst. So I know my numbers like the back of my hand, and that's why I'm so confident in the buffers that I've built that this business will be successful to start, hopefully.
Brilliant. Now, one of the big things, there's so many people that I I see transition from being employed to, self-employed, and generally it doesn't happen at 25. And again, I'm not going to use young anymore because you're at that 25-year mark now. It's all close to 30, and then all of a sudden you turn 50 and kids and family and all those things. But from your point of view, why did you take the leap? You were in mortgage broking, obviously learning a lot, very successful social presence on various different social media platforms, work in BP, living at home. It's a cushy lifestyle. 4 properties, you've got a lot of knowledge. Why did you take the leap into leaving all that behind to working in a business where you might not see a dollar for the next 4 months? Why take that leap?
Yeah, I think I've just always kind of had that in my DNA, that I guess a little bit of risk taking, but also I've just got this ambition, and I kind of look at business like that's kind of my next arena. Property was kind of me putting my foot in and getting into investing and the business world. But the next step for me was definitely looking at having something of my own. So up until a month ago, I was working at a great mortgage brokerage business in Empower Wealth. They were a great company that I worked at. Really respect all the people there. That was a great company. But as you said, I've been fortunate to build a following of over 110,000 people now, which still blows my mind. I get imposter syndrome every single day. I don't feel like I'm anything special, but I've built this audience, and the support I've received of starting this business has been so overwhelming. But I just knew, I guess, I have very big, ambitious goals, and business is probably what's going to take me there. You can make money in property, but like you said, the ROI with business, there's just no ceiling on what you can earn and what you can build. And I really like the idea of being able to build something of my own and run it exactly how I want to run it. And I guess that's why I started posting to some degree in the first place, was not for this business aspect. It was never to eventually have a business. I just wanted to share my journey about how a very ordinary person can invest in property these days. If you listen to all the doom and gloom of the headlines and the media, buying property just isn't achievable these days. And I just wanted to really prove that wrong. And that's what I want to do with the business as well. I want to help other young people invest in property, buy their first properties. And I feel like it's such a rewarding industry to be in. And that was kind of the reason I went out on my own.
Yeah, it's great. And I've always said it, and I've made some interesting comments, and some people agree or disagree, but I always feel property investors make that transition into business much easier, and they're more successful because they're more accustomed to debt. You've heard Harley, he's got spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. He's frugal. He knows exactly where his money's going. He knows that he wants his dollar to go the furthest. And that's what property investment forces you to do. It forces you to take a bit of a stock take of your money, ring fence your certain amount of buffers that are required to be able to hold properties longer term. And that's what business is about. It's about knowing your money, knowing where your money's going, knowing the direction you want to take. And Harley's mentioned it here right now. He said, I look at my property portfolio as a business. So that is his training. That was his training to then eventually start Dizzy Property Group, his own mortgage broking firm. Now, you've touched upon building a very successful social media awareness, over 100,000 followers across Instagram and TikTok. But I want you to emphasize or explain to us the importance and what that's given you by having that marketing or that networking pre-being in your own business. Do you want to just share, again, you've only just started your business for roughly about a month. Do you want to share the level of insight you've received from having applications to your first couple of employees to even booked out meetings? So just want to give some of our listeners a bit of understanding of what that social media presence or what that brand you've created has done for the start of your business.
Yeah, it's honestly life-changing. I mean, the best thing I ever did was posting that first cringy video in January of 2024. It's really changed my life. It's going to change my family's life and my future family's life as well. So I can't speak highly enough about getting yourself out there and trying to build a personal brand, be authentic. I feel like that's probably why people resonate with me so much, is I don't try and be anyone else. I'm a very normal bogan from the bush. I invest in property. What you see is what you get. It's not a persona. If you see me down the street, I'm the same person as you see online. And I feel like I can kind of, if people look at me, and if a bloke from BP can invest in property, they probably think I can get into property as well. I'm a very kind of normal person, but in terms of the support I've received from starting this business, it's been so overwhelming. I actually just hired my first 2 staff members. They start on Monday. I was originally just going to hire 1, but I had over 850 applications for that position, which again just shows the power of social media and how many people wanted to work with me, which really blew my mind. So instead of hiring 1, I hired 2 and kind of bit the bullet there with kind of just backing myself, because I knew how many people were coming through with inquiries in the first couple of weeks, which is, yeah, it was overwhelming to say the least. So I've had, hundreds of people reach out and want to support me, and it blows my mind. It's very exciting, but yeah, it wouldn't be possible without the social following that I've been able to build and the trust I've built with my audience.
And I think you've just hit the nail on the head. It's the trust that you've built with your audience. You know, you're very authentic. You know, you use the word bogan from the bush, but I know just how lovely you are as a person. I know the level of extent that you've gone to help people, and the amount of coffees that you've had with people just chatting about your story and things that you've given to them to help them in their journey. And I think that's, again, the authentic side of who Harley is. But again, for all the listeners, we've heard, you know, that building of that brand, building of that social awareness, it doesn't just translate into dollars in the bank account, but, you know, you've heard Harley put out an advertisement where over 850 applicants signed up straight away. Now, I know people in the mortgage broking industry that will put applications out and get none. And these are, you know, brokerage firms that have been in the space for well over 5 years. So it helps you, that social awareness of your brand, that social awareness of who you are, doesn't just help you as far as revenue, but it helps you bring in the right people, create the right culture, which then, you know, gives the business a lot more fuel, and more fuel means more profit. And then Harley can do a lot more things. And I know that he does a lot of, you know, off-the-cuff mentoring to a lot of younger people, and not necessarily providing any financial advice, but just giving them some basic things that they can start doing, as little as just saving 30 or 40% of your money as opposed to spending it. And they're the good things that, you know, that you do, Harley, and that I try to do with a lot of my clients on a daily basis. Now, a couple other things I just wanted to touch base on: building your brand. And, you know, you've touched upon it just with how, you know, how chuffed you are, and you spoke about imposter syndrome. Does the brand now stop that you started, you know, Dizzy Property Group, or do you take it now to another level? People always tend to ask me, well, where do I stop doing things, or where do I back off? What's your plan for Property with Harley?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And my whole thing, as I said, I've been authentic. So I kind of pulled back the curtains and showed, like, people online, money's always been a taboo topic. It's, people don't like sharing what they earn, how much they save, what they bought. People don't really give you the details. And that was my whole thing, was I don't care. I'm happy to tell you to the cent what I earn, what I save this month, how much that property cost me to the cent, and just kind of really, I guess, pull back the curtain and show everything that I'm doing. And I've been so open and honest, and I'm so fine with that. I'm happy to share that, because I think it's helpful to other people. When I say I'm 25 with 4 properties and this property cost me 120 grand, it's not to like showboat or anything like that. It's just to kind of really show what's possible. But it's definitely a tough one that I've been kind of dealing with. People have been saying, like, how are you going to go? Are you still going to share like your full, what are you earning and how the business is doing and all these kind of things when you go from the up and comer BP worker that's making 100 grand a year, and what happens if you start making a lot more money? You kind of lose that little bit of relatability. But as I said, I've always been authentic. I've always been me. So I'm going to bring people along with the journey, and it's probably different to a lot of people who are willing to do as business owners. But you've kind of seen me at my worst and working my backside off, working the BP shift. So I still want to bring all the people with this journey, and I'm still going to be as transparent as ever with Dizzy Property and what I'm building there as well.
Yeah, awesome. And I suppose advice, because, you know, I've got lots of younger viewers of what school should have taught you. I know that I get many comments saying, oh, Jeremy, I'm sharing this with my children. They're not 18 yet, but I really want them to learn all these financial literacy that you share. What advice have you got for young investors? What things can you tell them and share with them, you know, based on your journey from being, you know, and I know your father tells me this all the time, you actually were a fantastic footy player. Could have seen you playing for the Sydney Swans, but we were very thankful that you've chosen the path of, being in this space around property and mortgage broking. But, from a young 18-year-old up until a 25-year-old who's taken the leap of faith and started his own business while having debt, what advice can you give to other people younger than you or even older than you to get themselves into position to not emulate essentially what you've exactly done, but to give them that hope and the scope of being able to achieve what you've achieved?
Yeah, I'll give you two ones here, and it's probably the biggest ways to fast track whether you're trying to invest in property, whether you're trying to build a business. And for me, it's been seek education and seek people who have done what you want to do. So you always hear that saying, don't take advice from anyone that hasn't done what you want to do. And I live by that. So you're my accountant who is a very successful accountant with a great property portfolio. It wasn't an accident that I ended up working with you. I definitely sought you out as someone in the industry that I knew had done what I essentially want to do. I want to build a successful business and I want to build this portfolio. So that wasn't an accident that I sought you out. Same with my mortgage broker. So the A team I've built in my property portfolio, it's no different in business. I've now got a business mentor who's had a successful mortgage broking business, and I'm always a sponge. I'll never be the person to say I know everything. So for young people out there, seek education and seek people that have done what you want to do. So education, whether it's books, podcasts like this one. 3 years ago, I was listening to podcasts daily, the Pizza and Property podcast, What School Should Have Taught You, Property Couch. There were so many different podcasts that I'd consume every day. I'd read books, and that's that side of education. But for me, I still think the biggest return on investment for someone trying to get into property or trying to get into business is find people that have done what you want to do and learn from them.
Beautiful. So again, everybody listening, education, be that sponge. And you've mentioned, I love these three letters, ROI, the return on investment, having people in your corner that have done it, that you can lean on. And not necessarily is it going to be free mentoring, it may be paid services. But the goal is that you want to try to emulate all the positives that they can give you and understand all the negatives. Negatives are important. I know Harley and I chat about this all the time. What are the pitfalls? What are the negatives? Because knowing the negatives helps you stay very clear of them so that, nothing's going to be perfect in life. But if you can have every opportunity of doing everything right from the start, I'd rather be building on some very solid foundations than, building a house out of matchsticks. Harley, I just want to really appreciate and thank you for coming on What School Should Have Taught You today. It's a fantastic story that you have from working your backside off. So I know you reference yourself as a bit of a bogan from the bush, but I actually say to a lot of people I know that you're going to be the biggest thing in the industry over the next 5 years because you've just got so much enthusiasm and you approach it with so much authenticity and drive. And it's so rare to see that at someone at your age. But for you to work 2 jobs and to do that for the large portion of 3 to 4 years, it's hard work. Not just did you earn that money and sacrifice that time, but you put that to good use with properties. You've been prepared to sell one investment, as you mentioned, to be able to fund your dream and build Dizzy Property Group, which I'm excited to see where that starts to turn the dial and turn the wheels over the next couple of months as you enter into your first year of business. You've given some really good advice to all young listeners that are out there, which is don't forget to seek as much education as you can. It takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was Harley's property portfolio or ambitions to start his own business. Don't forget brand awareness and creating your own presence in the industry. And I think Harley's done it better than anyone I know at his age, giving real tangible facts and figures of what he's done and how he's been able to achieve it. He's definitely not going out there with any, sports science new whiz toy, or he's definitely not as good looking as the Kardashians. But what he does do is he gives really good facts, and I think that's important. You need to show who you really are, build that brand. People will follow you, and that's transcended into him now starting his own business, having hundreds of people apply for jobs, and I know that he's got hundreds of phone calls booked in over the next upcoming months for people to join Dizzy Property Group and for Harley to act as their mortgage broker. Harley, thank you very much for your time. I look forward to seeing what you can achieve in your journey of the next 5 years. And for anybody that's listening, if you want to follow Harley, you can look at him and search him on Instagram at Property with Harley. He's got a fantastic TikTok channel as well called Property with Harley as well. I know he's had a number of people which have started to create a lot of fake accounts. So you're doing a lot of good things, Harley, which is good. But if you get any of those fake messages, Harley's never going to sell you cryptocurrency. I probably don't even think he's got cryptocurrency in his portfolio, but he's there to give you, a lot of fun facts and make property fun, make investing fun. And if you want to get in contact with Harley, you can reach out to him on his website, dizzypropertygroup.com.au. I think Dizzy spelt DIZZY. dizzypropertygroup.com.au, and get in contact with him and get your property portfolio moving. Harley, thank you very much for today, mate. It's been exciting. And I'm really looking forward to seeing your next year in business, and hopefully you can share that journey with all of the followers, not just from what school should have taught you, but from your own following as well.
Thanks for having me, Jez. I could talk to you all day, mate, and I really appreciate the kind words. Yeah, loved it, mate.